Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to have a go at drawing or colouring a metal object using alcohol markers. So I had a look online and I found some armour that I thought looked pretty cool to use as reference. And it's actually supposed to be a shoulder pad that I'm drawing here. At this beginning stage though, I am just sketching this out with a pencil really lightly to a point where it almost doesn't show up on camera. I almost didn't even bother including this bit in the video, but as it progresses you can see it a little bit more. And I figured I would show it quickly at the beginning of the video just so you guys can see the full process of what I'm doing here. And this video isn't going to be a full tutorial type video, more just me studying some armour and practicing with alcohol markers, like Copic markers and things like that. Because I do think that shiny or metallic surfaces are probably one of the hardest things to draw, or for me at least they are. But I will try my best to give some tips and pointers of things that I learned along the way, where I can. You might have seen on camera there, I'm using a Copic multiliner. It's super thin is this one, but that's just because it's the only one I have. And I'm using this to outline my drawing, so at least it will show up a little bit better on camera now as well. It's also highlighting a lot of mistakes that I've made. It was actually surprisingly difficult to draw this. For such a simple object, it was really difficult to get it symmetrical, and it was difficult to get a perfectly rounded edge or circular edge. You can probably tell. I was tempted not to use any line art and keep it a bit more realistic, but I didn't think that I would be able to get a rounded edge with my alcohol markers. So I thought inking this would help neaten up the edges. Once the inking is done, there's no going back at this point. So with any marker piece, I would normally start with a colour swatch to help me decide what I want to use in this piece. I already have some that I've done in the past, so the colourful one is my Touch New markers. I'll put a link on screen and in the description box below to my review on those markers. And on the second sheet of paper, it's just a swatch of the cool greys from Copic, Touch New and Winsor & Newton Pro markers. And you could probably guess there's going to be a lot of grey in this illustration, so that's why that's quite a handy swatch for me. So from this I have a rough idea of colours and shades that I want to use, but I'm still going to play around on a separate piece of scrap paper, just because it's been a little while since I used my markers and it's good for me to just play around and find out which ones blend nicely together and which ones don't. It also helps just because you might have noticed one of my markers had actually dried out. I'm glad I found that out before I started. And I was mainly using this bit as a way to incorporate some blues in and see if I could blend them with a grey without it being too strong in colour. You can probably see some of the purples didn't work, but some of the blues worked quite well. So once I had picked out the colours I wanted, I finally plucked up the courage to actually start this piece. Knowing where to start on something like this is actually one of the hardest parts. Eventually I just had to go for it. So I started with the really pale blue, and I used the Cool Grey 00, I think it is, of the Copic markers to blend this out quite a bit and desaturate it even further towards the edges of the metal pieces of armour. And then I'm just going in with some of the darker greys. Every time I put a little bit down, I do use a lighter grey again to blend it together, before eventually starting to add in some subtle bits of colour. So I wanted a slightly yellow light source on one side, and I wanted it reflecting in the metal surface. And I put some of the darker blues in as well, again blending that out with a similar brightness of grey. It works quite well because it almost just desaturates it a little bit. So one thing you have to bear in mind is once you go too dark with a marker illustration, it's hard to get lighter colours over that, whereas at least if you've started lighter, you can go over it with darker ones as many times as you want. And I always say that metallic surfaces, shiny surfaces, are really difficult to get right without reference. So I was following reference here as something I found on Google. I think it's actually a shoulder plate from Game of Thrones, but it wasn't completely clear, and I don't get it exact to the reference, which I don't mind. I just wanted it to at least look slightly realistic though. So a few things to remember when painting metal or shiny objects like this are that it is going to reflect a lot of the environment around it. So not knowing what is actually around the object can prove quite difficult when colouring it in. And I think that's one of the reasons why metal is so difficult to paint or colour. I've noticed when I have done metal studies like this, they often have a blue tint in them, And I think that's because a lot of them are photographed outside and it's actually the sky that you're seeing. So they do pick up colour of things around them. This one definitely had some indoor lighting though, and that's actually what the yellows and oranges were coming from. And then they bend around the shape of the shoulder pad. So I've tried to make some things slightly more transparent towards the centre, the main rounded bit of the shoulder pad. And these are again objects that are reflecting in the surface, so something that's in the background, or behind the camera I guess you could say. But slightly transparent, that you can't make out any detail on them or anything. And one other thing to note with metal objects is that there is a lot of contrast in certain areas, so it can go from a very light area, almost white in fact, to an area that is almost black. The main way to get good at drawing metal and similar objects is of course to study them and practice drawing them. Once I was happy with that, I actually decided to give this a black background. I didn't like the look of it just on white. It felt like it was missing something. And also adding a black background, to me it made it stand out a little bit and also lightened it. When it has a white background, a lot of things look darker in comparison. And I also go in a little bit with a white colour pencil just to add some extra highlights. I think I went in with another fine liner as well to refine the edges of some of these. Sorry that my head is getting in shot by the way. And last of all, I went in with a white jelly roll pen. And this was really effective adding on to the edges of the armour, especially anywhere where it was black on the edge. So you can see right on those side panels, adding white to it made it stand out from the background even more. So anyway, there it is all finished. I think I spent a couple of hours doing this. It's only a small piece. I did find it quite difficult, I'm not going to lie. But overall, I'm relatively happy with how it turned out. And I'm going to do another video next week showing you how you can add like a rust effect to metal using markers again. So definitely make sure you check back for that one. I hope you enjoyed this video guys. As always, if you did, please do leave me a comment below. Let me know what other videos you want to see. And as always, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. Thanks so much for watching.